Hi, I'm Kirk Evans, president of U.S. LawShield. We're here today to talk about the status of the legal challenges to the new gun control laws passed in a number of states after the Supreme Court's Bruen decision in the summer of 2022. So after the Bruen decision, a number of the states around the country, based upon that ruling, had to go around and tweak their gun laws to get in compliance with the Supreme Court's ruling. But what a number of the states did was not just simply tweak their laws to comply, but they passed and enacted a number of new gun control laws. Those laws, of course, were immediately challenged by lawsuits by individuals and gun control groups in those states and around the country. So here's just a quick update on the status of those rulings and those challenges. A key factor here is we get questions all the time. You'll hear something on TV, read it in your social media feed, or you'll see it on the internet that a federal court has issued a ruling, saying X. The key with federal court rulings is that it depends on what court issued the ruling, what did that court say, and who does that law apply to. So, for example, a federal court ruling in Michigan may have no impact whatsoever on a federal court ruling in Kentucky, even though it may involve the exact same issues. So the key is, what jurisdiction are you in? If you're in the same jurisdiction, may apply to you. What court issued the ruling? Was it a lower court, intermediate court of appeals, or was it the U.S. Supreme Court? So if the U.S. Supreme Court issues a ruling on, say, constitutional matters, that federal court ruling is probably going to apply to everyone in the U.S. If an intermediate court of appeals issues a ruling, that ruling is probably only going to be precedent or applicable to the lower courts within that particular jurisdiction, within that circuit court of appeals. If it's a lower court ruling, it very well may not be precedential value as to any other court whatsoever. Then the kicker is what did the court say and who does it apply to? So if you have a court that says, I hereby declare such and such law unconstitutional, and I enjoin the government or the state from enforcing it. And what enjoin means is I'm banning, I'm prohibiting, I'm blocking the state or the government from enforcing it. That ruling may apply to everyone within that jurisdiction. If the court says, no, I find, for example, these two people under this particular fact circumstances as applied, that is unconstitutional, that may not apply to a single other person in the jurisdiction. So the key is figure out what the court said, and figure out who it applies to. So let's start with Oregon. So Oregon had two different big rulings on their new gun control laws. The first one was the state court in Oregon determined that most of the new gun control laws, were unconstitutional. You might say, well, that's the end of the matter. Nope, last week, early June 2023, came to the conclusion a federal court trial on almost the exact same issues, and the federal court is expected to issue a ruling on the constitutionality of almost all of the same laws. They could agree 100% with the state court, they could disagree 100% with the state court, or there could be a mix and match. We agree this part's unconstitutional, we agree this part, or we find this part is enforceable, but we will have to wait to see. Now, will that be the end of the matter? No. Both of those cases will work their way up through the courts of appeals, one through the state court of appeals, the other through the federal court of appeals, and then perhaps many, many months, if not many, many years down the road, one of those cases, or both, might make their way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Next state is New York. So if you thought Oregon was confusing, New York is even more confusing. There are 9 separate lawsuits going on as of the day of this filming in New York on the subject of their new gun control laws. Some have upheld portions of the new gun control laws. Some have struck down tiny, limited portions of it. Some have struck down, I would say, the majority of the new gun control laws. All of those cases are going to have to work their way through the lower courts, get a final ruling, and then work their way up to the intermediate courts of appeals, and then to maybe one day a final ruling at the U.S. Supreme Court, but that will be months, if not years, down the road. So as of right now, there's no certainty in New York. The best Advice you can probably get is you need to comply with the laws on the books as they are right now in the state of New York. The next state is Illinois. So in Illinois, a lower federal court determined that their new gun control laws, at least the ones challenged there, were constitutional, meaning they are valid, as written. Now, the plaintiffs there thought, well, hey, the U.S. Supreme Court, they issued the Brune decision. Maybe they're going to be helpful on this issue. They asked for an emergency appeal to the United States Supreme Court. They skipped the Court of Appeals, went straight to the U.S. Supreme Court. And what did the U.S. Supreme Court do? No, they're not going to grant any type of emergency injunctive relief, meaning they're not going to stop the ban or step in to stop these new gun control laws. So right now in Illinois, the laws on the books, as of today, are enforceable, and you need to comply with those laws. Now, there'll be further proceedings in the lower court. Again, appeals to the intermediate appellate courts, and then maybe one day an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the last one we're going to talk about is New Jersey. New Jersey, we have a little more certainty, not finality, but a little more certainty. A number of injunctions have been issued in New Jersey against the new gun control laws. What these injunctions do is they enjoin or stop the government from enforcing those new laws. Now, that's not the end of the matter. There's going to be additional proceedings in lower courts, again, appeals to the intermediate level appellate courts, and then perhaps one day appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court. So if you live in one of these states or jurisdictions where there have been new gun control laws and you've had some rulings on these laws, on their constitutionality, what do you do if, say, you own an item that you're concerned might now be illegal, or if you want to go out and get a concealed carry permit and now there's new rules and regulations? We highly recommend that you consult an attorney in your area. The rulings, the legislation, everything combined can be tens, if not hundreds of pages long. So, maybe you can figure this out on your own, but we highly suggest you consult with an attorney in your area. The good news is, if you're a U.S. LawShield member, a part of your membership includes, at no additional cost to you, the ability to call U.S. LawShield and ask to speak to an independent program attorney in your state. And you can ask them all the ins and outs of items you may own, the new gun control laws, how they may apply to you, and what do these recent rulings mean to you as an individual in your particular state. For more information about us, go to uslawshield.com.